Chapter 101, Flying Leaves and Flowers. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. The fourth palm of the dragon and elephant Prajna palm had been successfully cultivated. The entire palm technique set had reached the low class of spiritual stage martial techniques, which was as powerful as a mid-class spiritual stage martial technique. The palm technique had progressed fairly well. Now it was time for Zhang Yuochen to focus on the sword technique. The sacred sword skill was a low-class spiritual stage sword technique with 12 moves in total. Zhang Yuochen had only cultivated 3 moves, but he needed to cultivate the entire sword technique in order to fully demonstrate the technique's full power. He sat cross-legged on the ground, thinking about the 12 graphs. There was a shadow of a human figure on each graph. Each of them looked lively, wielding swords with various striking movements. When Zhang Yuochen was practicing the sword technique, he could not help grabbing the flash-shining sword. As he began waving it, rays of sword light flowed around his arm and displayed a sharp sword breath. After 10 days of practice, Zhang Yuochen had cultivated Sacred Plenilune Sword, the fourth move of the Sacred Sword skill. After 15 days of practice, he had cultivated the Sacred Wave Sword, the fifth move of the Sacred Sword skill. After another 15 days of practice, he had cultivated the Sacred Wind and Rain Sword, the sixth move of the Sacred Sword skill. Zhang Yuochen had stayed in the internal space of the time and space spinal for 43 days in seclusion, which was equal to around half a month in the external world. During those 43 days, not only did Zhang Yuochen practice the Sacred Sword skill, but also he took the Triple Purity Genuine Qi pill every day to greatly elevate his cultivation. The Genuine Qi had filled up half of his Qi lake. With his current cultivation, he would be able to defeat warriors in the final state of the Black Realm even without using the time and space domain and the dragon and elephant Prajna palm. Tomorrow is the day to fight against Feng Zilin on the life and death platform. It's time to go out for a walk. Swish, swish. As he stood up, Zhang Yuochen heard some sounds of sword breath in the space several meters around him, as if there were swords flying through the air. Zhang Yuochen was so excited. He had reached the peak of the sword following the mind and greatly elevated the sword comprehension realm. The sword following the mind could be divided into 4 realms: the initial stage, the intermediate stage, the advanced stage, and the peak. Not many Black Realm warriors could cultivate to the intermediate stage of the sword following the mind. Once they had reached the intermediate stage, they would be seen as strong warriors of the Black Realm. Both Huang Yanshan and Duan Muxingling were warriors at the intermediate stage realm. Zhang Yuochen possessed the martial arts memories from his previous life as well as a powerful martial soul. It was marvelous that he had reached the peak of the sword following the mind at the advanced stage of the Black Realm. He was only 1 step away from entering the realm of heart integrated into sword. Having reached the peak of the sword following the mind, even a blade of grass or a branch on the ground could be used as a sword. Thus, one could easily kill people with tree branches and blades of grass. There was a significant change in Zhang Yuochen's temperament, as if he had transformed into a young sword master. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound while arriving at yellow number 1. He frowned and said in a cold voice, "Who is this?" He thrust one leg against the ground, which shot a leaf into the air. When the leaf fell in between his fingers, he merged Genuine Qi and sword comprehension into it. He snapped his fingers and unleashed the leaf as if it was a sharp sword. Boom! The distant wall had been penetrated by the leaf, leaving a crack. A black cat flew out from behind the wall and said with surprise, "Flying leaves and flowers. It's really something, young man. You've reached the peak of following the mind at such a young age. Soon after, you will break through to the realm of heart integrated into sword." Looking at Blackie, Zhang Yuochen withdrew his Genuine Qi and asked, "Did you steal books again?" Blackie stood up on his hind feet like a human being. Carrying a thick book in both of his front claws, he said, "I've been confined in the yin-yang wooden graph for 100,000 years. Needless to say, I was completely isolated from the outside world. No doubt I'll have to read more to understand the changes in Kunlun's field over these 100,000 years. Zhang Yuochen nodded and agreed with what Blackie had just said. He should also spare some time to read more and keep up with what had happened over these 800 years. It was always a good thing to read and know more about your surroundings. Hey Blackie, come with me. I want to see if my fourth brother has fully recovered, Zhang Yuochen said. Blackie thrust his legs and jumped onto Zhang Yuochen's shoulder. He sat on Zhang Yuochen's shoulder and continued to read. He did not pay too much attention to where Zhang Yuochen was heading. Zhang Yuochen had only seen Zhang Shaxiu once and there was not any family bond between them. Yet, Zhang Shaxiu spoke out for Zhang Yuochen and was badly injured. Zhang Yuochen was touched by what he did and had a good impression of his fourth brother. Therefore, he wanted to go visit him after his seclusion. While Liu Chengfeng and 3 freshmen of Yanwu Commandery were on their way to the Dragon Martial Temple, they bumped into Zhang Yuochen. They were so excited and hurried up to greet him. Liu Chengfeng said, "Your Highness, you're finally done with your seclusion. Something bad is going to happen." Zhang Yuochen asked, "What happened?" Before Liu Chengfeng could explain what happened, the freshman next to him said with madness, "Your Highness, Square Commandery has been suppressing the students of Yanwu Commandery while you were in seclusion this month. Quite a number of our students are seriously injured. Others have also been bullied more or less. Our lives are miserable. Moreover, rumor has it that 2 students of Yanwu Commandery disappeared when they were conducting a task outside the school. The students of Square Commandery probably used unknown methods to get them both killed." The other freshman added, "The students of Square Commandery didn't dare to break into Dragon Martial Temple and attack you. Therefore, they bully us. Even I have been beaten 3 times. I have to hide whenever I see them because I'm too scared." Zhang Yuochen never expected things would turn out like this. He asked, "Why didn't the presbyter of the school get involved?" Liu Chengfeng explained, "In order to harden and enhance the competitiveness among the students, the presbyter wouldn't intervene in fights between students. Moreover, they have Elder Situ to back them up. Thus, they can do almost whatever they want on Western Campus." Liu Chengfeng lowered his voice and said, "The status of Elder Situ on Western Campus is just beneath the chief and 2 other vice-chiefs. Now, it is Elder Situ who manages almost all relevant issues on Western Campus." Zhang Yuochen finally understood how it worked. As long as students of Square Commandery did not publicly kill other students, then they did not violate the regulations of the school and would not be punished. As for the 2 missing students, no one could prove that they were dead and there was no proof showing that the students of Square Commandery were the killers. Zhang Yuochen said, "They are taking revenge." Zhang Yuochen and Ziqian had killed around 100 young warriors of Square Commandery during the first round examination. Therefore, students of Square Commandery had been bullying and killing the students of Yanwu Commandery in order to seek revenge. They even wanted to kick all the students of Yanwu Commandery out of Western Campus. One of the students looked woebegone and said, "I've had enough this month. Your Highness, failure is not an option. You have to defeat Feng Zilin tomorrow. Otherwise, we, students of Yanwu Commandery, will be completely conquered. The students of Square Commandery will no doubt suppress us even more." Another freshman nodded and gasped, "If our 9th prince is defeated, I have no choice but to return to Yanwu Commandery. I do not dare to stay on Western Campus anymore." 2 other freshmen also nodded. Zhang Yuochen said, "Don't worry, guys. Since students of Square Commandery have started a provocation, I'll fight with them. By the way, Liu Chengfeng, what did you come for?" Liu Chengfeng tapped on his forehead and said, "Oh yes, almost forget about it. I've heard that Nixu An, Wang Lang, and Xizu of Square Commandery had led a bunch of students to make trouble for Zhang Shaxiu, the 4th prince." Zhang Yuochen looked cold-blooded and said, "Nixu An again? Did he not suffer enough last time?" Liu Chengfeng responded, "The reason why they attack the 4th prince tonight is to affect your heart state. Once your heart state has been disturbed, you will lose the fight tomorrow on the life and death platform." If Zhang Yuochen did lose the fight on the life and death platform, death would be the only way out for him. Zhang Yuochen said, "Lead me to my 4th brother. I'm eager to see who dares to attack him today." Liu Chengfeng had confidence in Zhang Yuochen. He brought Zhang Yuochen as well as the other 3 freshmen, and they rushed toward Zhang Shaxiu's dormitory as fast as they could. Being the number 1 freshman, Zhang Yuochen enjoyed a prestigious status and lived in Dragon Martial Temple. The top 10 freshmen and the top 100 students of Western Campus also had individual dormitories. Although it was not as luxurious as Dragon Martial Temple, it was comfortable and suitable for practicing. As for other students, they could only live in a normal dormitory with 4 people in one house. Zhang Shaxiu was a normal student and, therefore, he shared a dormitory with 3 other students. His roommates had been beaten badly by Ningxiu An. He threw them all out of the dormitory and they were bleeding heavily on the ground. Ningxiu An grabbed Zhang Shaxiu's clothes with one hand and lifted him up from the ground. He sneered, "Piglet Zhang, have your arms healed?" "Unfortunately, my arm has been destroyed and can never be healed." "What do you think I should do?" Since Zhang Yuochen had cut off Ningxiu An's hand, he installed a short sword, one of the genuine martial arms, on his wrist. He then embedded the sword into his wrist and linked the sword to the meridians in his arm. "I'm not Piglet Zhang, I'm Zhang Shaxiu." Zhang Shaxiu clenched his teeth and mumbled. He was scared of Ningxiu An. Therefore, he did not dare to speak too loud. Ningxiu An lifted his arm and put a sharp sword next to Zhang Shaxiu's right ear. He could cut off his ear down with one downward slice. Ningxiu An sneered. "Ha ha. If you say Zhang Yuochen is a coward, I'll let you go." "How does that sound?" Wang Lang, Xizu, and the other warriors of Square Commandery that stood at the side laughed wickedly. Although Zhang Shaxiu was irritated as well as scared, he responded with courage. "Stop daydreaming. My 9th brother will cut off your other hand." Ningxiu An's countenance fell and he said, "Such an ungrateful piglet. I'm offering you something good and you dare to disgrace me." Ningxiu An waved his arm downward and was about to cut off Zhang Shaxiu's right ear. Zhang Shaxiu was so frightened that his entire body was full of cold sweat. He shut his eyes and screamed out loud. Yet, no matter how hard Ningxiu An pushed down, the sword embedded in his arm was stuck and would not fall. The edge of the sword had been caught firmly by 2 fingers and stopped in the air. Naturally, the master of the 2 fingers was Zhang Yuochen. Slap! Zhang Yuochen's finger had turned jade white. 2 strands of genuine qi had dashed to his fingertips and generated a powerful force. The force had shaken Ningxiu An's sword and broken it into 2 pieces. Such a powerful force was transferred from the sword to Ningxiu An's arm and had shaken him, bringing him great pain. Ningxiu An fell back and almost bumped into the wall. He lifted up his arm and looked at the broken sword. He was shocked and said, "How can you destroy a 3rd-level genuine martial arm with just 2 fingers?" Clash! Zhang Yuochen threw the half of the blade tip on the ground, coldly stared at Ningxiu An, and said, "Ningxiu An, you are a coward bullying my 4th brother. If you don't mind, I will be practicing with you now."